I fight for all of you. This is a legacy for all of us. When you hear Black history, when you hear Martin Luther King, that's American history. Because we are all Americans in this place. And if you are not American, we love you anyway, because you are welcome. That's what America's supposed to be. So again, this is a day of celebration, but it's a realization that the dream has not been reached. We still have more to do. And so before I introduce my fabulous panel who is here to have a conversation with all of you to celebrate a legacy, I'm just going to walk you into the background of Martin Luther King. And I'm going to make sure I get it right, so I'm going to read from this so that you know. And so this is adapted from the King Center since 1968. Born on January 15, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader of the civil rights movement. During the less than 13 years of Dr. King's leadership, African Americans achieved genuine progress toward racial equality through protests, grassroots organizing, and civil disobedience. People who demand equality cannot be stopped. His charismatic leadership inspired men and women, young and old, in this nation and around the world. Dr. King's concept of somebodyness, I am somebody, if you haven't heard that before, which symbolized the celebration of human worth and the conquest of subjugation, sought to give Black and poor people hope and a sense of dignity. Dr. King led the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. On October 14, 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolent resistance. And in 1965, he helped organize the Selma to Montgomery marches. Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech and letter from Birmingham jail are among the most revered orations and writing in the English language. Dr. King was planning a national occupation of Washington, D.C. to be called the Poor People's Campaign when he was assassinated on April 14, 1968. His accomplishments are now taught to American children of all races, and his teachings are studied by scholars and students worldwide. He is the only non-president to have a national holiday dedicated in his honor, and is the only non-president memorialized on the Great Wall in the nation's capital. He is also memorialized in hundreds of statues, parks, streets, squares, churches, and other public facilities around the world as a leader whose teachings are increasingly relevant to the progress of humankind. He's relevant today. He was relevant then. He'll be relevant tomorrow. We're going to have the opportunity to have a conversation about what that was like, how we see the dream, and where we're going into the future. So I'm going to now introduce my panel. I have, let's see, on the very end, Dr. Penn, Miss Melanie Berru. I have Destinee Evans, Dr. Ashley Griffith, LaKiesha McDonald, and Stovall right next to me. And the first question is going to go to Melanie. As a sociology instructor, I know you felt a connection to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because of his degree in sociology and his use of the teaching as it was really facilitating the civil rights. One of the things that I think is important is that this movement was strategized. It wasn't just happenstance. So tell me in your words who Martin Luther King Jr. is to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Let me do this again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There we go. First, I want to say thank you so much for requesting me to be here. I feel really grateful to be in this space. Very honored. And I'm not going to say much. You know, it's time my time to listen to my colleagues. But I'll say a little something. And before I continue, I want to just acknowledge our brothers and sisters on this native land. The land belongs to the Miwok, the land that we're on right now. So the Miwok tribe, the Yoka, and the Kamash tribe So I just want to be able to, while we talk about justice and social movement, we're on red ground, and I need us to acknowledge that. So Martin Luther King Jr. Moved me at a really young age, even before college. I'm a product of the educational system, and I didn't really learn about POCs. I didn't learn about people of color. I didn't learn about the Chicano movement as a proud Chicana until college, until an elective. But what they did, what the school did allow, they allowed the teachings of Martin Luther King Jr. in the civil rights movement. What I didn't know at the time was, I didn't know that it was a watered down version of Brother Martin. I didn't realize that it was a whitewashed version of Brother Martin until I was a grown woman. But regardless, it still spoke to me. It was almost as if, one, it was his voice, but a lot of people can kind of maybe identify with it, but his voice was like a native drum, like boom, boom, boom. And as he spoke, it was as if he was drumming me home. I didn't have the words as a young child. All I saw was like this, beautiful black man who was like speaking to me as a young, brown, unconscious girl. And his words just drummed me home, and it felt familiar. So I really kind of connected to really ancestral memory. I didn't know, I was a little girl, but almost like that ancestral memory of brown and black resistance, right? And the struggle. And so it was tapping into a familiarity and a newness, right? And so I was grateful that I learned about Martin Luther King Jr., still really not knowing what I was learning, but inspired by it. And then when I went to college, and I found out that, I found sociology, and I loved sociology. And once I realized that, Brother Martin majored in Soc, like it made sense. So as I'm listening to the speeches, like I see some of my sociology students, like see those speeches, like listen to them again, and you will see the sociology. The Brother Martin was theory in the flesh, theory in praxis, right? Like that's why he was so transformative. I was like, whoa, that's conflict theory right there, right? He's talking about collective consciousness, right? And it was magical to me. And then when I got a little older, I realized, I started studying him for myself, and I realized, well, wait a minute, he's more dynamic than what I was told. And I started taking off like the decolonized eyes. I started seeing him from a non-Eurocentric lens, and I was like, whoa, he was radical. Because back in the day, I don't know about you all, but back in the day when we were learning about them, it was like, are you Malcolm or are you Martin? Are you Malcolm or are you Martin? And I was Malcolm. And I was like, by any means necessary, by any means necessary. And I didn't realize how profound Brother Martin was until I was a woman, right? Later on in life, where I'm like, whoa, the last 2 years of his life, he became more radicalized. Keep in mind, context matters. He was seen as a terrorist in our own government. He was seen as a terrorist, a deviant, a criminal. He wasn't loved. Today, it's so easy to love Martin Luther King Jr. It's so easy. It wasn't easy what he was doing. He was pushing against a white supremacy system. He was agitating. And people don't like agitators, right? And so he was radical, and that really kind of spoke to me. And I was like, wow, and then realizing that, that our government is responsible for the civil suit of his murder. I talked to my sociology class, and they're like, what? Grown folks not knowing this. He worked with the government, but the government was working with him and working behind the scenes. His stretch was so large that towards the end, they were like, this brother got to die. Because he was moving and mobilizing people beyond race and ethnicity. It was like race and ethnicity and culture, but now working poor, right? Anti-war movement, working class. The government was like, this brother has to go. Because he was becoming so radical and people were responding to him. To me, Martin Luther King Jr. is a radical. He reminds me of the importance of agitating, and not agitating for the sake of agitating because of justice, because of love, because of consciousness, because it's the right thing to do, the inclusivity. he wasn't just trying to make a name for him. He wasn't just trying to be a badass. He was doing it out of love, right? And love mobilized him and so many folks. So for me, I can't, he's with me. Martin Luther King Jr. is not like over here, like he's, I always tell my students, like if you look close enough, you can see the people that have impacted my life. I don't come here alone. I don't sit here by myself. Like I would say, if you use your third eye, you can see all the people that have impacted my life, because they're with me right now. And Martin Luther King Jr., that's what he played in my life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. I really appreciate how you reminded us of the ground that we stood on, and the idea that there have been many before us, and many who have suffered before us, and yet they continue to rise, and we need to do all that we can to support that. And so now I'd like to bring in Dr. Jay Penn to the conversation. And we had an opportunity to talk about your college years and how that was really the time where you felt like you had an awakening. And so I'd like to ask you, how has Dr. King and the civil rights movement impacted you?
Okay, that's two different questions, because Dr. King is one thing, and then the civil rights movement is something different. I'll pick up with Dr. King, and I'm so honored to even be here to have this chance to, share the impact he has had on my life. But he has affected me mostly as an intellectual. Okay? Not just the intellectual too, but also, like you said, is the nonviolent. This idea of nonviolent philosophy is radical, right? When you first get exposed to it, you think that it's soft, right? But you don't realize that, the light, that's a radical philosophy. So for that reason, that's why he has a holiday, okay? And that's why, I admire him so much. He is, he's much bigger than, The second part of the question, right, when you talk about the civil rights impact on me, I can sum that up by just saying I hit back, So that would be where I have some differences. That's why I admire him so much, to be able to just, still always choosing the high road, okay? And when I say I hit back, I'm just saying that I'm not nonviolent. I don't, but I'm not into, I'm not into guns and knives, right? I'm like, just self-defense, or I believe it's okay for people. I know people fight, that's what people do. I think that, but again, this points to how radical MLK was to state. He was unapologetically nonviolent too, and that takes a lot. Okay? So also as an intellectual, he had some of the same questions that I had, like his love for theology and sociology. Right? He couldn't understand why, people in sociology wouldn't listen to anything that people in theology had to say, and vice versa. People in theology wouldn't listen to people in sociology would have to say. So, people, I have some of my students here who are in my race and culture class. In that class, we take a comparative religion. We examine comparative religions, and we talk about all of these patterns, where we see commonalities between sociology and these different religions as far as, the communities aspects, what is good for the community. So, I think, I hope I answered those two questions.
You definitely answered that question. I like how you brought in the idea that it was radical to be nonviolent.
Yeah.
And it was strategic to be nonviolent. There were lots of conversations about the ability to fight back and what that would look like. And many of the freedom fighters and so forth went through classes in order to be and deal with the violence that they were subjected to. If you look back on the history, you see those who were sitting at the lunch counters and were being abused, and yet they persevered and they stood silent in their strength. And yet nonviolence does not mean that you are taking everything. You are just simply trying to move towards a path. So I also
deal with it if somebody was doing it to me, but if they're doing it to like women and children, that's the stuff I couldn't take that.
And that was a major part of the movement. There are a lot of women and children who were attacked by fire hoses and dogs. But there was a purpose to the marches. There was a dream that we were all trying to achieve. And so now, Destinee, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. You are the youngest on our panel, and so you've experienced the world different than what we've experienced. Your mother was in the military, so all you've known is really diversity and how that entails. And you had a teacher who really tried to ground you in terms of the teachings of Martin Luther King. And you grew up with the African American president as if that's how the world is supposed to be. And so I'd like to know from you, with the changes in the world today, why should students care about Dr. Martin Luther King and the continued struggle for civil rights?
Well, I believe we are the product of what he's done. Like she said, I grew up, my mother was in the military, and I moved around a lot. I lived in different countries. I've seen a lot. And I was taught people are people. Color was not a thing. I was going to learn that in school, and I learned that in school. I learned my color in school. So my fifth grade teacher, I came back to the States. I was living in Japan before I came back to this school that I was in. And there is diversity on the base. That's all you see is diversity. You see different colors. You see different people. You talk to different people. You interact with the people that live there. So when I came back to the States, I was the only black kid in my class. And my teacher, she was white, but she and her kids were mixed. And so Barack Obama started his campaign, presidency, she made sure that I knew why. She made sure that I needed to know. I needed to know why this was important. I needed to see why it was important. And I didn't understand that until she brought up Martin Luther King. And then she showed me everything that he went through. I was in the fifth grade too, so she could only do it in the mind of a young child, like she couldn't go into depth, but she said this is the product, this is why this is so important, as to why Barack Obama is so big, is so important, is so, big for you. So when he came into office, she made sure, she did it for me. I know she did it for me. She can't say she did it for anybody else. She did it for me. I feel like she did it for me. She made sure we didn't have any class that day. We had just Black history. And we seen him walk when the inauguration happened. And I'm crying. I'm crying, fifth grade crying. I know why I'm crying, but I don't know why I'm crying. So this is why I say we are the product. Because if he didn't fight for everything that he fought for, we would not be sitting here today. I didn't have to deal with drinking out of faucets, colored. I didn't have to deal with that. I didn't have to deal with, getting holes for having, I didn't deal with any of that stuff. I was able to speak to whoever I wanted to, have friends with whoever I wanted to, and they didn't have that opportunity. And if they did, they would, stuff would happen to them. So this is why I feel like we are the product of it.
Really important. The idea that sometimes, history gets away from us and we start thinking, why is this important right now? Why are you telling me about the past? Move into the future. We're all equal. Everybody has rights. If you don't pay attention to the past, you're going to repeat it. And I can say for sure that we're not going to allow that. And so you must look at the past in order to understand the struggle and what happened and what people were willing to do so that you, Destinee, can sit here, so that all of you can sit together. And so I appreciate the idea that you were brought in by your teacher and that you understand how important it is. And so now I'd like to bring into the conversation Dr. Ashley Griffith, who likes to be called Ashley. And she